San Diego Deputy District Attorney Summer Stephan is on the front line. She says human trafficking is the world's fastest growing crime, worth an estimated $32 billion annually, $810 million here in San Diego alone.
How young is the youngest victim you would have encountered?
The youngest that I've encountered was 12 years old. The detectives who entered the room to rescue this girl, when they talked to me, they were literally crying.
Janona Lilliard was even younger than that, forced by her own father onto the streets at just 5 years old to perform sex acts for money.
He put me on a sidewalk and men started walking up to me and they'd take me in alleys, women as well, and I'd watch them give my dad the money and then they'd come and take me and do whatever they wanted.
The abuse continued for years, her depraved dad even organising group attacks at his home in San Diego.
He'd have like a group of men sitting in the living room and he'd introduce me to them and basically said, "This nice man just wants to talk to you, and if you talk to him, you know, I'll take you and let you pick out a couple outfits or get you a nice toy."
That is just unimaginable for you. How old were these men?
One guy was really, really old. Had, I think, like an oxygen tank with him.
We contacted Janona's father by phone and he told us in part, "I don't have anything to do with her, I have nothing to say, and please don't contact me again." It's barely conceivable, but for Janona, things would get even worse. After moving into a foster home a few years later, she would be kidnapped at gunpoint on the street by a pimp.
He picked up his friend, then we drove to Motel 6 in La Mesa. And when we got there, he asked me to take off all my clothes. And they both raped me at the same time.
She was then injected with drugs to the point where she became almost catatonic, unable to fight back as she was repeatedly abused by dozens of men.
I knew then, I was like, this is it. Like, they're gonna kill me. I was actually praying that they did.
They'd broken you to a point where you were ready to die.
Yeah, I was like, just do it already. Like begging, just do it.
But fate had other plans for this brave teenager. Against all odds, as the abuse was unfolding, a police officer randomly knocked on the hotel door.
He brought me outside and I told him, I live in a group home, I was kidnapped, I don't know those two men. They both raped me, drugged me, beat me, and I've slept with probably over 50 men within the last 2 days.
50 men in 2 days?
Yes.
As a teenage girl?
Yes. I seen him get a little teary-eyed and then he gave me a hug and he told me, he said, "It's done. You don't have to." Sorry, I get emotional.
What was that moment like when the police officer took you in his arms?
You know, being abused by a bunch of men, including your own dad. I don't know why, I felt really safe with him. And when the two other detectives got there, they just made me feel really, they gave me clothes to put on. They didn't look at me like, oh, she's a prostitute or she's a whore, you know. They seen me for who I was. And since then, I've never looked back.
Sadly, on the streets of San Diego, her story is not uncommon.
Of the roughly 12,000 trafficking victims in San Diego each and every year, just take a guess at the average age, between 14 and 15 years old.